Hello, everybody. The football experience is back with a new camera angle. I thought I got a little bit of inspiration from Caleb when you changed your one up a little bit. So I thought, all right, I'm gonna go for the head-on one. But my one was also a bit of something that I noticed regarding like health reasons. Like I started getting migraines. Because I had it on my left-hand side, and I started getting like migraines like right behind my left eye and eyebrow. So I was like, maybe it's from the light, like those selfie lights or whatever. So yeah, I'm gonna see how I go. Hopefully, I don't get a migraine today by changing it so that it hits both my eyes rather than oh shit. Well, that's a bit of a disaster. Hang on. Let me just.
What is that?
I kicked the things. I wanted to extend my. Legs.
Oh man, that's too good. That's too
All
good.
right.
This is all going to be left in as well. That's great.
Yeah.
Oh.
Shit. All right. That's enough of a little bit of a personal story. So I'll update you on the migraine in the next pod that we have. But other than that, Caleb, we've had some interesting news, some interesting results. I want to start on.
What's the news?
Well, didn't you hear what happened at Bayern?
The Bayern change room.
Oh yeah, didn't you hear about that? So,
Mate. What? What do you think of it? Because I've got to transition into the game.
yeah, well,
I don't know what happened. I just read the headline.
apparently Mane actually punched Sane.
Yeah, that's the headline I read.
Yeah, and you know what? I think there was one specific instance. I think it was when it was. I think it might have been when it was 1-0 or 2-0, where Sane could have crossed the ball. I don't know. I think Mane might have been on the pitch at that time, and he went for the shot, and like Edison just saved it and sort of like just scuffled like around him, and then one of the City players cleared it, and it was like a really good chance. I was like, oh, maybe from that angle, Sane should have squared it because he had two players in the box. One was going through the middle, one was going, I think, through the back post. I think Mane was on the pitch, so like maybe it was relating to that incident. But yeah, like that's gonna be interesting, and maybe Mane won't be playing the next game either.
Well, it's going to be fascinating to see what happens from here and what Bayern do with that. But the funny thing was, as well, it's not like Mane. He's never got to this extent, but he's a spiky character. Remember the iconic shot of Bobby Firmino walking between Salah and Mane down the Turf Moor tunnel. And Bobby looks at the camera because there's so much tension between Salah and Mane, and he's just like looking at the camera like, oh. And it's just like, well, I think Mane brings this, but if we transition this to the game, because I don't know the ins and outs, like I said, of what happened. But honestly, I'm Team Mane on this, because what I saw unfold in the game, I'm just like, how is Sadio Mane not playing in this game? How has Serge Gnabry played 90 minutes of this game?
Wait, did Serge Gnabry play?
Exactly. Are you out there?
Yeah, I swear he had like 2 touches.
Oh my god, he was horrific. He was so like Sane. I can understand keeping him out there because he's got that quality in him. But
he had some decent shots.
In this game. Mane had to play in this game. I can't believe it. So if Mane's going around clocking people, probably should have clocked Thomas Tuchel first for the team selection. And we'll get to Tuchel, but let's go into the game a little bit and what we saw unfold.
Can I say my one piece?
Yeah, go on.
And you watch a lot more Bayern than I do, but holy shit, this is worse than Upamecano. I did not. I was, when like you're just left like lost for words, like you're stunned, like you see a defender make a bad pass once, and you're like, okay, it happens, it happens. But holy shit, like, it just kept happening and happening and happening. And you're like, take this guy off. And he played the whole 90, didn't he?
Yeah. And I can understand that one more than the front areas, because front areas are a lot easier to change than the defense.
But can I add one more thing to it as well? It wasn't not forget the misplaced passes, but the ones that actually reached his players, they were such bad passes because they were always bouncing off the pitch. They weren't skidding off it. Like, they were actually bouncing, and like his play, and like, I'm not blaming the players with this, but like, when you're playing those kinds of like drilling the pass into your own players and it's not skidding along the ground nicely and it's actually bouncing up at like knee height, it's like, this is going to be impossible to control even for the best players around. So the passes that did actually reach his teammates, they were like impossible to control as well. Like, his passing is horrid.
It's hit and miss. I think there's games where his progressive play is quite good, but it's
hit against Dortmund when he's scoring.
Yeah, well, there was definitely, I thought, probably the 10-minute or so spell where he was horrendous.
Oh.
Just probably a little bit before the mistake, but definitely after the mistake. Really, really bad. But I didn't really notice his impact, but if we could have said one thing, I didn't notice his impact until then, I should say, is what I meant to say. But if we could have... Is Thomas Tuchel not been watching this team all season? Like, what's going on? I don't get it with Upamecano. I can't get there. He's soft. Because you can see he's soft after he makes a mistake and he lets it get to him. He's talented enough. And I like his attitude, but he's a little soft. And if I can take a little bit of blame off Upamecano, he's never going to be a number one defender. And he relies on the guy next to him for a lot of... He will rely on it, because I'll never see him as a number one after I've seen all these mistakes. It's like the Granit Xhaka theory. Like, yeah, he's great this season, but I've seen too much to ever just trust that in the biggest moments. So I think I'm going to paint Upamecano with that same brush. And De Ligt, while he's been okay this season, he's not the rock-solid guy you need back there. He's sort of stalled after Ajax. So if I can take a little bit of blame off that, and if that's the main takeaway on Upamecano, I think he still might have a future at Bayern, but it's as either a 2, a pretty weak 2, or a 3. I think it's perfect for Bayern if he's the third-choice centre-back. But that suggests that maybe they need a number 1 next to Matthias de Ligt, who I think can grow it to be into a number 1. And he could have a big season next season after acclimatising to Munich. But so going forward, I don't know, that's the big question for me, because what we saw in the game was absolutely nothing from Bayern. I thought first half they were okay. They were in the game. But there was nothing... I'm not asking you to be gimmicky. I'm not asking you to come up with some outlandish plan, but I didn't really see a plan from Bayern. It was just a 4-2-3-1. Go out and play, rely on your qualities, and that's fine in the Bundesliga. But when you come up against Manchester City, you need more. You need a game plan. You need to target certain areas. You need to be wary of certain areas. And you know what I'm going to say here? The big thing that disappointed me from Tuchel. What do you think the big thing that disappointed me from Tuchel was? And I touched it on it in the pre-game tactically. Man City, where's
Stonesy?
Yes, I believe that is a weakness. And Thomas Tuchel is meant to be the one manager. And that's the question that comes out of this for me. But he's meant to be the one manager who they got in who could take on Pep Guardiola. Now, whether he was brought in specifically to take on Pep Guardiola or whether this really is a long-term plan because of what Tuchel said after the game about falling in love with these players, maybe this is the start of a journey. I don't know with Thomas Tuchel. He doesn't have a great track record of being on long journeys with clubs. So we'll see. But if it was for beating Pep, he came up with nothing. He offered absolutely nothing tactically in this game. There was no awareness that this could be a weakness for Manchester City. They hardly ever got at Akanji and Ake. There was one in the first half where Sané ripped Akanji a new one. And it's like, go back at that. That is a weakness. You've got centre backs defending the wide spaces against a team who you would think are probably the best equipped in Europe to exploit that. And if I could give Tuchel a defense, we said it might have come a bit too early for him, and maybe you could see that in the attacking players looking indecisive, just looking a beat off. Maybe they couldn't work on that on the training ground enough, but they've been working together all season. And oh no, Bayern offered nothing. I know they were okay for a spell before they conceded, and your boy Jan Sommer. Well, not your boy, but it was that goalkeeping thing that you said. Did you see it? Because Mark Bosnich was pointing it out for the Rodri goal.
Yeah, the way
You got to go with you got to go with your top hand.
Yeah,
and Mark Bosnich was straight on it.
I saw that and I'm like, he got. It looked like he got fingertips with his bottom hand. I'm like, he would have saved that if he went with his top hand.
Yeah, and another thing with Tuchel, if we'll take it to that direction, but another thing with Tuchel, what I know it's 4 games, and let's say it's 4 games. They have been knocked out of the Pokal, and they look like they're knocked out of the Champions League after the first leg. Thomas Tuchel effect is not very good because they looked a lot better under Nagelsmann. I don't know. Even after seeing this, maybe Nagelsmann was more equipped to take on Pep, honestly. So
that's what it seemed like when I was watching. I was like, they don't seem fluid. And they just seem like out of ideas once they get into that final third. Even into the second third, they seem out of ideas. Like they just don't know what to do.
Yeah, if I could just say the last thing on Tuchel, I'm a little bit worried about the somewhat stall that I've seen under Musiala. Now, it's only 4 games. I know it's a small sample size. But I don't think Tuchel's been sure of his position. I don't think he's been flourishing in the games that I've watched, and I think he needs to be the key player at the moment for Bayern to flourish until they maybe get a striker and address that problem. But I don't like what Tuchel's doing with him and how he kind of made Sane the pet project. And yeah, Sane's great, but I'm always going to question Sane's temperament, and we see what happens is when Mane punches him in the face. So I'm pretty sure Sane wouldn't be blameless in that altercation. So I don't know. The Jamal Musiala stall, the lack of coming up with anything in this game, I thought Bayern just got their karma, and I thought I was actually as happy as I could be to see that, given that Manchester City were the team who won, and I'm not very fond of Manchester City.
Yeah, I'm starting to grow less and less fond of City, but I did say that I'm torn between them staying in the competition as long as possible and them just getting knocked out just so they don't win anymore. Because now that Arsenal is starting to become a direct rival, at least in the league, yeah, I'm going through like your emotions. You like with Liverpool being a direct rival for the last 6 years or so. But yeah, what do you think of the
Tuchel? What's happened here? Like they're out of 2 competitions and they'll go for the treble. And he was like, is he a long-term manager? Because he said after the game he fell in love with the players. So is he really just there to build a project? Should we fear Bayern going forward? We should always fear Bayern, I guess. But I don't know. If he was brought in for this season and to do good things this season, it clearly hasn't worked.
It probably the appointment was probably done too soon, because if you think about Chelsea, didn't he come in January? So he had. I think
it was earlier.
Yeah, so he had a whole month and a half before the round of 16 Champions League games started in Feb. Whereas now, he's had 4 games, so it's almost, I don't know. It's such a we talked about it at the time. It's such a weird. It was such a weird appointment for the timing of it. If it happened in summer, or if it happened, let's say Nagelsmann gets knocked out of the Champions League anyway, so there's no difference regarding that. If they appointed him after the Champions League knockout, then it's this makes okay, fair enough. Or if it happened in summer, okay, fair enough. But the fact that it happened 2 weeks before the Champions League game against City, it's this makes no sense. So
Well, no, but it does make sense because the consensus was it was to give us a better chance of beating Pep.
yeah, but you still need time to prepare. Okay, so
You
if we
do, but he's seen these. He had plenty of time in his time off to watch these two teams play and know how these two teams play and how the characteristics of these players, and he came
yeah,
up
but hang on,
with nothing.
if
Yeah.
we're gonna give players when they sign to a club, if we're gonna give players a whole season to acclimatize to the club, to the league, especially if they're going from one league to another, to the language, living arrangements, all that sort of stuff. If we're gonna give players one whole season, we need to give managers at least a month, like a month or 2 months, like
No.
to
Of
get
course, I'm not. I'm
everything.
not suggesting anything with that. They've
and
still got
and
a.
like
By consensus, they've still got a very good manager now.
yeah,
I want to see if he's still at the elite level. So, but I'm not. I'm not suggesting that you would think about getting rid of Thomas Tuchel now.
no, but
But
like
I'm just saying I'm so disappointed because that's like was consensus not meant to be that they've done this so that they can be more competitive in Champions League, the competition where they've won every single game in this season's competition, and that's what they dished up for us.
yeah.
So unimaginative.
Then the first game that Tuchel takes over, the 100% record is gone.
Exactly,
Yeah.
and they're out of the cup as well.
But just to my point, like my point wasn't
Mm.
that, like I don't think Tuchel needs to necessarily get acclimatized because he's German, he's worked in Germany, he's from Bavaria. But the fact that it's 4 games, like he needs more time than that to sort
Of
of
course,
get
but
it.
they're the worst 4 games he could have had. Well, the league's been good, but
Yeah,
the competition.
maybe if they appointed Sean Dyche, they would have had the new manager bounce in week 1.
Look, I kind of want to. Before we move over to City, I don't know. No, I don't hate it, obviously, because I got quite passionate there. But I don't like slating managers tactically without being able to think of something different that logically might have worked. And what I kind of came up with against this City team was a kind of a narrow diamond. Mane has to be one of the two strikers, Sane the other. Mane on the left, Sane on the right. I think that would be good if you could pin Sane up against Ake, because he could either go past it, but Ake's not too easy to go past. But his creativity from that side, looking for Mano, who's so adept at making those runs from inside the channels, as we saw at Liverpool. If you go the narrow diamond, look, the only conundrum I had with this, it would be Musiala as the 10, and he's so good in the press. I would split him between Stones and Rodri, and just say, as soon as the ball, and everyone else, that's the point. Mane and Sane, they sort of pinch the ball inside to force Man City to play into those two in Stones and Rodri. Because even Rodri this season, we've seen that he can be pressed when he
Oh
gets the
yeah,
ball in
against
in
Tottenham.
that midfield area. So if I could have Musiala ready to jump on that after Sane and Mane do the press, and then I was thinking in the midfield, obviously you got Goretzka and Kimmich, but my third choice on the right side of the narrow diamond would actually be João Cancelo. I'd put him in that wider midfield role. He'd play more central so he could help in that press where we're trying to target Stones and Rodri. But then when we have possession, he can overlap over the Sane side, and then we can keep Pavard in a good position, form a 3 at the back that sort of gives us that solidity. You can go 1v1 with De Ligt up against Haaland, and then Davis could overlap on the other side, and then you can create those overloads onto the Manchester City weakness, which is the wide, well, what I perceive could be a weakness, the wide centre backs in Akanji and Ake having to defend those areas. If you could transition quickly, which Bayern can because they have fantastic wing backs and wingers. So yeah, I don't know. It's just that's logically what I came up with if I wanted to trap things into Man City's sort of gameplay. Am I asking too much to come up with? Does that sound too outlandish? Is João Cancelo maybe the João Cancelo selection is a bit odd, but the rest kind of makes sense. I don't know, especially if you don't have Choupo-Moting. But I don't know. I wouldn't play Choupo-Moting either.
What about playing Coman or Nabry there instead of? I know Nabry didn't have a good game, but playing them there in the on the right hand side of the center midfield, because they have more speed at least, and they have more. I'd say they have more technical ability as well.
I actually trust João Cancelo in the tighter spaces, but if you wanted to go quick on the overlap, Koeman's a good shout as well. I don't think Gnabry's quite as dynamic as Koeman, and I don't. He's probably a bit more technical though. Gnabry might be all right in there as well. So yeah, you've got options there, but anyone that you choose there is a little bit out there. But I think once you shapeshift and you do the things that we were saying, like in possession, out of possession, it sort of makes a little bit more sense.
Yeah. I think that game plan sounds a lot better than what Tuchel came up with.
I'm glad you think so because yeah, like I said, I didn't want to come out. It's like, oh, you do something better. It's like, all right, I'll think of something to try to do better at least. We don't know if it will work, but logically, I think it sounds alright.
Yeah, but at least it sounds like you have a plan. Like you said at the beginning, it just seemed like he just set up his formation and just told him to go out there and play, and like that's what it felt like watching it. Like they weren't trying to set traps or anything like that. Yeah.
I think it's all right. I think it's at this point that we turn a bit of attention to Manchester City.
Just one sec. Did you notice
Yeah,
how the City crowd was booing Cancelo as well?
Yeah.
That was
Big time.
that was a weird one. Like I know that he didn't necessarily leave. Like he had the apparent falling out with Pep and everything, but it's like he's still your player. He's out on loan, so why are you booing him? Like if he was sold, fair enough, but he's still your player, and he just won a championship 6 months ago or 8 months ago or whatever.
Yeah, I agree. But they were riled up. I thought the Etihad crowd was actually quite good, especially after the Rodri goal. They put Bayern under a lot of pressure. Well, they helped their team put Bayern under a lot of pressure. And yeah, no, the crowd was actually right for a Champions League night at the Etihad. So, but yeah, I think now that's sort of the point I was making. We'll give the fans a little bit of credit, but it's taken us 20 minutes and it's all Bayern centric. But Manchester City still won this game 3-0 and are as good as into a semi-final of the Champions League yet again. And honestly, they can still play probably better than that. I don't know. We haven't seen it that much this season, but they were pretty good. I still say no team has exploited their weaknesses yet, but that's just me. Maybe I'm crazy. Maybe I'm on this island. I think they have weaknesses. I think this is probably the weakest team we've seen since the pandemic season of Manchester City. So I guess only last season to compete with, but last season's team was better than this season's team. Even though they've got Erling Haaland, I just have more confidence in them at the back. But what I will say, to give a lot of credit to what is happening is Manchester City. How good was Ruben Diaz in this game? At this stage, I expect him to be my first team come the end of the season. I think it's big player season, like I said, and I think he is starting to turn in the performances of the best centre back in the world. I don't think anyone else on reputation and on form is really close to him. I don't know who competes because Virgil's been wretched this season. Kim Min-jae's only a 2/3 of a season wonder at this stage. He needs to do it consistently. And we've seen Ruben Diaz for what now? 2-3 seasons at City? 3, I think. He's been fantastic. Yeah, he's been fantastic. He's still quite young. He's such a good leader and he was really good in this game. And he is a big reason why this hybrid sort of 3 to 4 in the back. And I will also say I liked how Stones was actually the centre back going into midfield rather than the right back going into midfield. I preferred that. I still don't love it, but I preferred that from him going from right back into the middle. So a few little tweaks. They were all right. City were good in this game, not great. Maybe I asked too much from Manchester City, but they won 3-0, man. It was so comfortable.
But two things, like have you noticed how the uptick in form, or at least the results, has been since Ruben Diaz has come back into the squad?
Bro, I've been driving that bus, so I have noticed.
Because I think he only came back late Jan, early Feb, and then ever since then he's they've been conceding less. They've looked a little bit more solid at the back. Damn, what was my other thing going to be? Oh yeah, but you know the other thing that I noticed as well, if I'm comparing Bayern and City, City were actually defending as a whole unit and as a block, whereas Bayern were defending very open, very loose, very unorganized, really. And that's something that I've noticed about City, like that they've started doing recently as well. They're actually defending as a block instead of a little bit more open than what they were doing. So that's another thing that's helped with their defensive record, that they've changed to a more team centric defensive style.
Yeah, and I gotta say, John Stones has been a good part of their defensive organisation as well. I think for me, he's clearly City's second best centre back. I just wish that they played him and Diaz next to each other as just the two normally, but that's just me. And I think to your point as well, to helping them defensively as well, is I think that they've just turned a dial up in terms of the pressure and intensity they play with in forward areas, particularly in these big games, particularly when Bernardo Silva comes into the team. They just go up a dial, and I think that was exemplified by the Grealish sort of robbing Upamecano for that goal, because the press was really good. He denied the angle and he confused Upamecano. And yes, Upamecano should be a lot better, but it's still a good example of what Manchester City are doing well. They did it well against Leipzig and they've done it well against Bayern. So maybe there's no mistake there that there's two German oppositions, but yeah, they are. Do we give Bayern any chance going forward? We'll probably touch on that later, but maybe a little chance. Champions League is weird sometimes, but City, I don't know. City don't look that fragile.
Yeah, City look like they've. That I'm probably gonna put them as favorites now to win the whole thing. Before they were probably third favorites, but now after the last couple of games that they've played in the league and also Champions League, I think I'm ready to put them favourites.
Big winners. Now, that gives me a perfect transition to the other game of the morning. Remember how we said you won't be watching that game live? I ended, because they have like the pre-game and the halftime show on the main game, but they give away the score from the other game.
Mm.
I ended up watching Inter Benfica as the one I watched first. But yeah, it was just, and I think if you're calling Manchester City the big winners of the competition overall, and that might be right, but they still have the hardest path to the
Yeah,
final.
yeah.
Of the other side of the bracket, my big winners are actually Inter, who I thought were really good going to the Stadium of Light. I thought they sort of quashed all this talk about Benfica being. Benfica felt like quite heavy favourites for this tie, and when I heard all that analysis going on, I'm just like, I love Benfica, but I'm not going that far. I think Inter is still a much more experienced team here. They're more battle hardened. Well, I can't say more battle hardened. They both came through very tough groups. It was an even match at worst. I might have just put Inter through it on somewhat pedigree, maybe more recent in 2010. Otherwise, the clubs are quite similar, actually. But Benfica obviously have the famous curse. But in this game, I thought Inter showed that they were a better team. I thought the 5-3-2, like I said after the Salernitana game on the weekend, that they didn't win. I thought they looked more organised. They were really organised in this game. I thought they outplayed them. Barella was fantastic. Uh, I thought Lautaro was good. Lukaku obviously comes on, scores a penalty. 2-0. I don't know. They feel about as good as United. That's a huge task for Benfica to go to the San Siro and overturn 2-0.
If there was away goals, I'd put Inter through as like 90%, but because there's not. But even if there wasn't, like, you still need to go to the San Siro and score 2 goals anyway, so I guess it doesn't really matter. And maybe if it was 2-1 or 3-1, that'll be like, okay, you only need to score 2, not 3. But yeah, I'd say that tie is as as good as
did you
over.
watch it?
No, I didn't.
Watch the
Didn't
game?
no, I didn't end up watching that one.
Oh, damn. I thought you were going to bring up the point. I'll have to bring up the point, though. But the big point for Inter and why I think they looked quite very good in this game, I would say very good, and why they should feel very confident that they can go to a Champions League final. because we'll touch on Milan Napoli later. But your boy, Marcelo Brozovic, he's back and he's just a delight to watch. He's one of my favourite midfielders in Europe to watch. And it's been disappointing that we haven't been able to see him at his best in an Inter shirt this season. But like I said, it's big player season, and he is a big player, and he played extremely well. He bossed this game in midfield. Like I've always said, I love how the 5-3-2 frees him up to kind of be everywhere. He doesn't have to be as disciplined in that holding role, but he always understands his responsibilities. But he can always move into whatever space he needs to dictate the play. And I thought he put on a masterclass against Benfica. And if Inter have that guy back, I don't know what's happening on the Milan Skriniar front. I don't know if Inzaghi really even wants to use him, given that he's already going to PSG. So maybe he's more settled with Darmian in there. And Darmian, while he's a very limited player, he does offer good functionality as a right centre back because he's got all that experience as a right back. So naturally, the shape shifts, and you allow Denzel Dumfries to get further up forward. And I must also say, Denzel Dumfries is starting to start the games on a more consistent basis, and I think he made my second team last season. So he's another fairly big player, fairly big part of what Inter do well. And yeah, this just looked like the recognisable Inter, the one I think me and many people thought would actually win Serie A this season, the one we probably expected to win Serie A last season, and this one looked much more like that team. And yeah, I put them as the big winners on this side of the bracket, and we'll go into some reasons why with Milan Napoli on the other side.
So do you put them pretty much as good as through?
As good as through to the semis, yeah.
Yeah, I'd say so with that scoreline because Inter are very Italian teams in general are very hard teams to score against.
Inter especially. See, like Milan, maybe I wouldn't put under that category because sometimes they're a bit open. But Inter are a pretty classic. Well, 5-3-2 is very in vogue in Italy, and they are the epitome of it. Simone Inzaghi's been doing it for years, so yeah, they will be hard to break down, no doubt about it.
Yeah. So the other game, which one do you want to go to next?
You start where you want to start.
Look, I didn't watch Milan Napoli because I watched the other game, and then the news came on, and then they did the sports, and then they revealed the score. I was like, do I really want to watch a 1-0? I know it might be like an exciting 1-0, but I'm like, yeah, I'll skip it. So yeah, you will have to carry the weight on this one.
All good. Wait, are we starting on that one?
Yeah, we'll start on that one. We'll end with the Real Madrid one.
Well, this game was unsurprisingly the one I have the most notes on because I was probably the most fascinated by this, especially after the City Bayern tie turned out the way it turned out. I thought straight away at the start you could see Napoli came with a somewhat vengeance. I thought they were stinging from what happened at the Maradona. I thought they asserted themselves pretty well in the early stages. Could have been a goal up in 2 minutes when Krunic passed it straight to Vadaskelia in the 6-yard box. I don't know what he was doing, but from that point he screwed his head on and actually had as good a game as you could hope that Krunic can have. That's not maybe saying much because I think he's a very limited player, but as much as you could expect from that guy, you got. But yeah, after 20 minutes, in the first 20 minutes, it was very obvious that this was a game of matchups, just like the one at the Maradona. And the Anguissa versus Tonali matchup was pretty key, I thought, in there.
Can't extend my legs.
Yeah, Anguissa against Tonali, I thought was probably the matchup. Maybe that was indicative of what I was seeing, particularly in the midfield areas where it was Milan very much only focused on stopping Napoli playing. But when it came to actually playing themselves, they had absolutely nothing. I mean, you have Krunic, you have Tonali's very good, don't get me wrong. I think he needs to decide what kind of midfielder he's going to be. Because I think in recent weeks I've seen a very good ball-winning midfielder. but in recent weeks, he's left me cold with what he does in possession. I don't think he's doing quite enough in possession at the moment. And you saw that in this matchup because for the most part, it was Anguissa trying to do things because Napoli got their foothold in the game and they were somewhat dominating for the first 20 minutes. Tonali was very good being physical in that battle, but when it came to when Milan had the ball, there was nothing to be offered. And then you're asking Krunic to do something. But I go through. After 20 minutes, it didn't become apparent, but it was so telling that Victor Osimhen wasn't on the pitch. And it was just like, where the hell are Napoli going to score a goal from? So they can have all this dominance, but there's no threat. What am I? I know Kvaratskhelia is having a fantastic season. He was trying to be a bit of a threat. If I could criticize Spalletti a little bit, could you put him into the middle when he wasn't working out on the left? Could you put him closer to goal? Can you make him unpredictable against Tamori and Kayer, where you can maybe have more benefit because you can float around a bit? I don't know. I think it was something that you could have thought about doing, given that obviously Varad is your main threat without Victor Osimhen, and if something's got to be created, it more than likely has to be created by him. But what ended up happening, which was a sort of indictment on Napoli without Osimhen, is that their biggest goal threat was Giovanni Di Lorenzo from right back, who had a couple of really good headers, a chance right at the end that Mike Mignon was fantastic to save right out of the corner. I love the respect this game was played at. You could tell it was edgy because they've met each other so much, but they all know and respect each other a lot. So it was a game played in a good spirit. But then what I was going to say about Milan having nothing in midfield, what they did have, and this is the second time in as many meetings between these teams, was Brahim Diaz, who unlocked the game once again like he did at the Maradona, evaded two very piss-poor challenges from Zielinski and Lobotka. Lobotka is showing his weaknesses. I know he's fantastic in the ball, and he was quite good on the ball in this game, helping Napoli get a strong foothold in the game. But man, the way he gets beaten by Brahim Diaz does well, but a better holding midfielder never gets beaten by what he did. And he opened the whole game up, and Milan score on a counter attack. Alex Merritt, I'm so disappointed in him in the goal. I think he could have done better with it. The Benacer strike wasn't very good. Merritt's presence in goal, I'm not feeling it as much in recent weeks, which I'm a little disappointed in. And he might be clinging on to my three teams come the end of the season, especially if they get knocked out, by that goal, because Milan obviously have previous doing that against Tottenham, winning the whole tie 1-0. So yeah, it was that's how the game goes in at halftime. Napoli can feel a little aggrieved. I thought they were a better team, but we know what advantages Milan have, and we saw it in the first half as well. And Rafael Leao nearly scored one of the best goals I would have ever seen, honestly. He rode two challenges and got a bit lucky with the way he beat Rachmani at the start, but if you want to pin Rafael Leao up against anyone, it's Rachmani. That's for sure. He'll have him for toast all the time, and he did in this occasion. And then he ran past the Anguissa challenge, and then Kimpembe had to do the old Virgil van Dijk of splitting two players and then going to him at the last minute. He just put his shot wide, but man, Rafael Leao, what a specimen, because he's so quick, but he's so big and strong as well. And he's not a constant player in the game, but when he comes to life, my God, it's one of the best things you can see on a football pitch, I reckon. I don't think there's many better sights than him running full flow. I just wish he did it a little bit more often. Could you imagine if you had a player with Rafael Leao's stature and speed and strength, but with Vinny's motor? Just his relentless energy to keep going at an opponent over and over again. That would be the most frightening player in the world. That's maybe Kylian Mbappe's maybe just a little bit lesser version of that, to be fair. But yeah, man, I don't know, Rafael Leao, bit of an appreciation post. But what was I going to say? And then the second half, I guess over to the second half, and this is my big gripe with this game, and I was so disappointed, but the game got away from Napoli late on. Anguissa gets two yellow cards. I thought honestly, I thought neither of them were yellow cards. For the first one, because I thought there was a foul on Varadskhelia by Tonali before that, and then Anguissa has to make the tactical foul on Teo Hernandez, who was moving forward. Yeah, clean yellow card once you're in that situation, but I thought the ref should have already given the foul Napoli's way. He also gave a foul to Giovanni Di Lorenzo, who was making that point. And I must say as well, Giovanni Di Lorenzo is the captain, so if he wants to talk, he wasn't overly remonstrating. He was just saying forcefully, "Hey, that should have been a foul there." Straight away, the ref gave him a yellow card. I'm like, but he's the captain, man. He shouldn't
Yeah.
be getting a yellow card for that. No way. And he didn't. He didn't overdo it. It was one sentence, and right then, and you can fault Napoli for this because they should have known the character of this referee. But I will also say, I don't want referees with this type of character refereeing big state games. They have no common sense. It's all by the letter of the law. It's like, yeah, we want referees to take back a bit of power sometimes, but this was over the top. And for me, he might have ruined this tie because not only will they be missing Anguissa for the second yellow was absolutely not a yellow. He's sort of one of those ones where he didn't know Teo was coming in. The ball was maybe waist height. He went to get it, but as soon as he actually touched the ball as well onto Teo. And as soon as he saw Teo, he pulled his leg away. He didn't go through with the kick or anything. Barely made any contact with Teo. Teo, I love you, but fuck, he makes the most. He makes a meal out of everything. And I guess he's got to be suspended for the second leg. Now, I think they can override that. But 5 minutes later, Kim Min-jae won a clear ball in the air, got penalised for the foul, and kind of out of character for Kim Min-jae, remonstrated, threw his hands up in the air, and did a sort of twist like, hey, what are you doing to the ref? Booked straight away, and he'll miss the second leg as well. So Napoli are now down Anguissa and Kim Min-jae for what I thought was pretty farcical refereeing, not understanding the stakes of the game and any common sense. And the thing that really riles me up is he was getting the decisions wrong, so he had no reason to think that he was right and give the players these yellow cards. So the players had kind of every right to say you were wrong there, referee. I thought it was poor. I thought it was a bit farcical. Napoli now have it all on in the second leg. And the bigger picture thing and why I think Inter were the big winners, although Napoli can turn it around in the second leg. And Napoli could end up being the big winners for the whole thing, because if we see Victor Osimhen come back into the team, and if they can somehow get through this tie, I know that they should still feel somewhat confident, but given everything that's gone against them so far, given Milan now have 2 wins in a row over them, Milan somewhat have the wood over them, if they could somehow, and that's the problem, I'm saying somehow, because I don't quite believe it, but if they could get through this second leg and get past Milan, I think that might give them the confidence for them to believe they might be able to win the whole thing. So it could be a blessing, but right now it feels like a curse, and it feels like a curse that might knock Napoli out of the Champions League, because a lot's going to come down to Victor Osimhen and how fit he is. And man, Giroud a lot might come down to Giroud now that Kim Min-jae is not there, because he'll feel like he can bully anyone but Kim Min-jae. So I don't know. I don't feel good about Napoli's chances, but I will say if they do get through, I think they'll feel really good about their chances going forward.
Do you think this is actually similar to I think it was the 2020 Champions League, I think, quarters?
Yeah, PSG against Atalanta?
No, PSG against Bayern, where Bayern were missing Lewandowski. And Bayern
No,
had
they
enough.
met each other in the final in 2020.
No, but I think maybe it was the following year. And
Okay.
Lewandowski was missing. And PSG ended up going through. And when you're watching that game, Bayern had enough chances where you're just like, if they had Lewandowski, he would have finished 2 or 3 of them. And it might be a similar story here, where your main striker, your main talisman, is missing, and because he's missing, it's that difference, and how at the beginning of the season we were saying that City didn't sign Haaland to win the Premier League. They signed him to win the Champions League and to be that difference maker in those 2 or 3 games, like in knockout competition.
My internet is pinging out.
Oh yeah, I can see that you're lagging. But did you got everything
Oh
that I
no,
said,
where's he
or
going?
you good?
Oh no, where is he? Everything's frozen. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I can hear you, but I don't know if you can hear me.
Oh, I got some noise.
Yeah.
Yeah, man, come back.
All right, hang on. I'm gonna quickly.
Wait,
Yeah, you good?
yeah, I'm good. I'm good. You just absolutely cut. You didn't cut out on me, but you cut out on me. I
Okay.
got nothing.
When did you? Where did I cut out?
You're halfway through that point about not having a striker. Bayern versus PSG, 2021 season.
Yeah. So like, basically that, like, what I said was, in that game, if you watched it, you were thinking the chances that Bayern had if they had Lewandowski, he would have buried 2 or 3 of them, and maybe that's gonna have a similar sort of effect here on this game where Napoli are missing their main guy, their goal scorer, who's banging in 20 plus goals. Where if they get chances, if they had him, he'd bury them, but because he's missing, unfortunately, those chances don't get buried. And I also said at the start of the season how people were saying that City didn't sign Haaland to win the Premier League. They signed him to win the Champions League and to be that difference maker in those 2 or 3 games where they need a goal or two. Similar, like for instance, last year in City versus Real, I think I said
Yeah.
that City should have scored like 8 or 10 goals, like in the first leg. That's how much like chances they had, like clear cut chances they had. It'd be interesting
Yeah,
to see.
4-0 at half time wouldn't have been inconceivable.
It would be interesting to see the XG for that one. What City's XG was.
Yeah, true.
Um,
True.
but like if Haaland was there to, he would have had 5 goals, like similar
Well,
Against Leipzig. I reckon he would have had
yeah,
five.
if Haaland and that was kind of the difference because Benzema had one half chance in the first half of that game and he scored, and all of a sudden Real were somewhat back in the game because I think they were 2-0 down at that point,
Yeah,
and City were rampant. They should have been three. They should have been four. So yeah, and I think so disappointing to not have the Champions League quarterfinal with Victor Osimhen now. Consensus is that he should be back for the second leg. I don't know how back he'll be, and that's
that's the
why
other thing.
I'm very pessimistic for Napoli. I think this might be the end, and I think they might lose out to Pedigree in the end because I don't know. Obviously, this group of Milan players have done nothing in Europe, but the club have won 7. They're the second most winning club in European Cup history. So I don't know. The Champions League has this weird way of pedigree really mattering for these kinds of things, and Napoli haven't been to this stage. They've got a little bit unlucky. They could have done better in how they dealt with the referee, but they still got that referee, which has been unlucky. They were, I thought, the better footballing side, but you can't get away from the fact without Victor Osimhen, they didn't have enough threat. 1-0, I think walking away from that game, they'll be reasonably happy with 1-0, considering they had to play the last 30 minutes with 10 men, but considering there'll be 2 fairly key players out for the second leg, yeah, I just think things are too stacked against them, and I don't think they'll get through, but I will be hoping a lot that they can get through because I think their ceiling is still higher than Milan's. And I thought we saw not a fully defeatist, it was a smart game plan by Pioli, but the fact that they had no ability to play with the ball and all their game plan could be was about stifling what Napoli do leaves me a little bit cold. I think Milan are a little bit better than that. I don't know. They were great in the league game at the Maradona, so if they play like that and get through, then full credit to them. But if it's a variation on this sort of stifle thing, yeah, I just hope that Napoli can get past that if that's what it is.
Yeah, I think for the neutral, you definitely want Napoli to go through, but
Mm,
that's one thing to add as well.
well, I don't.
AC beat them 4-0 at their home stadium, so that could be playing in the back of their minds.
Yeah, and I don't want to shit on Milan because I actually do like Milan as a team, and when they're playing well, I think they're as good as most teams in Europe to watch. But it's just, can they actually play well and show that they are a better team than Napoli? I don't think they really did it in this first leg, but they got the win, and they have some really good players who can, obviously, like you said, go to the Maradona and finish this job out. So, and that's kind of what I expect after how the first leg went. So, yeah, like we'll, but hey, what does that set us up for in the semi final if that happens? Like,
Yeah, a Milan derby.
let's hope no one gets hit by a flare this time and they don't have to abandon the match, please.
Yeah, and then play behind an empty stadium.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
That'd be
This could
horrid.
be the San Siro's grand send off, couldn't it? Really, a
That
Milan
actually
derby
would.
in the Champions League
Yeah,
semi-finals.
that actually
It's kind
would.
of written there, isn't
Yeah, it's
it?
written in the stars. Um, and our final game of the
Well,
quarters.
you kick us off on this.
Um, there was moments there where I thought, all right, the overall consensus is that the team chemistry behind Real Madrid is just way too good, and the individual quality, it's not miles above, but the difference is the team chemistry. Like Chelsea just cannot. They just don't look cohesive. They don't look. They're just like a bunch of individuals sent out there, go out and play, see what you can do. Whereas Real Madrid aren't to the level of, for instance, like a City or an Arsenal, where it's like, okay, if this player gets the ball, you're making this run into this space that's opening up another space so that's like a plan B and all this. Like they're not to that level. But Ancelotti like hasn't set them up to be that way, but they're still aware enough of where the players will be, and then to beat players with 1-2s and individually 1v1, like with Vinny, for instance, or Benzema. But yeah, that there's just a massive difference in the quality of coaching and team chemistry between the two teams, and I don't think Chelsea is going to overcome this.
No, I don't believe they will either. And
Also,
there's two.
Reece James
Yeah,
was doing
go.
his best Trent impression. He was getting
Well, we'll
skinned by
talk.
Vinny.
We'll talk about. I didn't think he was the most egregious.
He
I
wasn't.
thought
He wasn't.
Fafana was far worse. I'd always trust Reece James. We'll get to that in a minute. But what I was thinking with what you were saying was it's sort of there were two bigger picture points for me and football and the way I think about football. And the first one was um, the sort of the point about the individual quality. And I just think for me, I guess it's all the same point in terms of Carlo Ancelotti as well. But it's for me that is my favorite football to watch. It's the football where the manager understands the qualities of the player, and then they just sort of let them go out there and they let them sort of within a structure. They play a structure that suits them, suits their qualities, but lets them react to what the opposition are doing and adapt and has given them the tools. And whether that's Ancelotti giving them the tools, I mean, he was with a fair few of this core in the 13-14 season when they first won it, which I still believe is Real Madrid's best Champions League winning team. I would say out of all their recent Champions League winning team, last season's might push them close, but last season's was so unexpected, whereas 13-14 you start Cristiano Ronaldo, you start a very good Gareth Bale. It was kind of expected and they played up to that. So I thought that team was probably the best one. And so he was there for then. But obviously these players have got so much experience throughout the years, going on that three-peat with Zidane after that. That Ancelotti has the luxury that he can do that. But I think it's about, and this is why I always bring up Pep's Bayern team in that mid 2010s, because I guess that one was the example of a manager giving them all those tools. Obviously, they're all fantastically intelligent players. Anything, I'm not discriminating. I'm not saying Pep was the reason why these players were what they were, but he gave them a structure that made sense, and they were able to react within games together as a collective. And I think you see that from Real Madrid. I think on the point, and the other point I was going to make is why we maybe Chelsea. Well, I guess not Chelsea. City fans would have every right to be like, why are you like this with my team, but Chelsea are a basket case, and there's no real passion behind anything that you say. Well, I think it's just I grade Chelsea on a completely different scale because of what we've seen from Tom Bowley. So in terms of, or I'll use the Bayern example, in fact, because we've seen two clubs who had different managers in the round of 16 compared to the quarterfinals, and obviously one in Bayern we all thought they'd upgraded to Tuchel, and obviously one in Chelsea was a sideways move at best. I think Chelsea would have looked better with Graham Potter in charge for this. I thought they would have at least been working together for months now, and they would have at least had that understanding. He was as well the guy who got them through Dortmund, and Dortmund wasn't an easy test at that time, and still probably aren't. So yeah, it didn't really make any sense for this competition. I don't know why Potter was sacked for Lampard, and honestly, they were never going to get a big name manager in halfway through the season with the potential of other clubs being uncertain with who they have in charge very soon. So yeah, it was just. But if we compare it, it's just like, well, I don't. What I've seen from Todd Bowley, what I've seen from the ownership group, I can't grade Chelsea on that scale because they've made some absolute crazy moves in the above the club. Whereas Bayern, you put them to a different standard and you expect them to be more rational, and that's why I'm a bit more passionate about what Bayern did than I am about Chelsea, because this wasn't unexpected. I thought in the game Chelsea, you saw the real difference between a team who had a decent game plan, because while they didn't look cohesive after that moment, I thought like you said, they had moments, and I thought the biggest moment for Chelsea was probably the first 15 minutes where N'Golo Kante made Luka Modric look very ordinary for that first 15 minutes, that's for sure. And he was a big difference. He showed his world class. He still looks tired, and I think if Chelsea, if you want to show the difference in the chemistry, actually, because I was thinking this, there was a moment maybe 35 minutes into the game where N'Golo Kante ran the ball just inexplicably out of play, and it's just like, man, he's tired, and he has not played for a while to this level, and Frank's asking him to do this amount of running as a box to box midfielder. I think Real Madrid in that moment, I think if that was Kroos and Modric and not Enzo and Kante, and maybe it's Kante's problem for not talking, but I think they just swap positions. And the other one says, here, I'll have a break in this holding role, and you go and do the box to box for a bit. And I think Enzo, he's only, 21? But he's not going to, he has a bit of the club. He's not established enough to say, N'Golo, you come in here and I'll go and do the running for a little bit. But I think that right there is probably a difference in chemistry where I think Real Madrid would adapt to that better, and they'd react to that, and they'd just say, here, we'll swap roles for 5 minutes, give someone a break. And you see that constantly in their interchanging of positions. So while I thought the Chelsea game plan was fine, it was what I expected it to be, and I thought it looked good for the first 15 minutes. After that point, the game becomes about the players' qualities, and that's where Carlo Ancelotti does a fantastic job, and that's where Real Madrid have, while I think in the midfield and defensive areas it's pretty comparable between Chelsea and Real Madrid, Vinny and Benzema just push them right over the top and make them easily the more threatening team, whereas Chelsea can't score a goal for love nor money. So there's no surprise that that's where the difference comes in this game. And if it weren't for Benzema and Vinny, I think it's a pretty even game, but they are there. That's why Real Madrid is as good as they are. And yeah, I don't know. It just went to kind of script, I guess. But yeah, it was easy to see what happened in this game.
I think it did go to script. Like everyone's expecting Real Madrid to win. I don't think anyone was expecting a Chelsea win except for Chelsea fans.
No, Todd Bowley did 3-0, 3-0.
But yeah, it's this team. They still haven't clicked. They haven't got that click, and now that click has been even further delayed because they got a new manager and an interim manager as well. Whereas if they actually got like a permanent manager, it's like, okay, you're getting a 3 or 4 month head start on preseason. Then in preseason you can click. But now it's like, well, you're pushing it along. So they should have appointed someone straight away, rather than bringing an interim, I reckon. Because like I said, the season's pretty much written off. Who do you trust more to get through the quarters? A Luis Enrique, a Nagelsmann, a Pochettino, or Lampard? Like,
Well, I just don't think they could have gotten any of those guys right now.
But even they're all without jobs, and like especially Poch and Luis Enrique, they've been out of the job for last 6 months or so. Luis Enrique after the World Cup.
That's fine. I think Luis Enrique will hang around, see what's available, and I think that's right. Nagelsmann only just got started,
Nagelsmann, fair enough.
Jump straight away, and Poch is probably your least out of those three. He's third on that list, so I don't know. I don't want to jump the gun and go and get Poch when I still might have been able to get one of the other two in the summer. So I kind of get the... Look, it's weird because I kind of get the decision. I think, look, two things could be true. Chelsea, I think, would have looked better with Graham Potter in charge. But do I slate them for getting rid of Graham Potter? It clearly wasn't working. And bringing in Lampard? No, I don't really slate them because if they end up... The bigger picture thing for me with Chelsea, because we expect them to get knocked out of here, if they end up getting Luis Enrique, if they end up getting Nagelsmann, I think that club and that group of players all of a sudden will have a belief that they could go on and win the title. And if you point to history, we saw the Mourinho team in 14-15 win the league, be in a very similar position in the table the next season, sack Mourinho. Was it Hiddink? I think it was Hiddink at that stage. They brought him back for one last job. Was the interim till the end of the season. Get Conte in, and they romp to the next title. So, I guess we need to... Do we need to see signs that they're better to the end of the season? I don't think that Chelsea team from 15-16, that season where Leicester won the title, showed any signs that they were better until the end of the season. So maybe they just have enough quality that they can recharge and go again. And they probably need a striker. I don't think their goal scoring's as bad as it suggests. It's kind of that catch-up thing. I heard someone else bring up the catch-up analogy on another podcast, so that was great to hear. I think it was James Horncastle on the Euro football show, and he said it came from Gianluca Vialli, who used to say it back in the day. So
I think I got it from Ruud.
So I think a lot of people have said it.
I think the first time I heard it was Ruud van Nistelrooy. I think.
There you go. So it's a football thing, I guess.
Yeah.
But, I think Chelsea, even though they don't have a striker, they're not as bad as this. Like, in terms of the players they do have, they should still be scoring more goals than this, and they're just not confident in front of goal. It's been a well-talked-about point, and they're pretty much out of the Champions League because, they couldn't finish any of those actions in the first minutes, or Mount had that chance in the last minute.
They actually had 2 or 3 chances as well in the first half. I think straight after the Benzema goal, they had a chance, didn't they?
Yeah, they did the Reece James cross. And
that's why I pulled off an amazing save.
Yeah, the game plan was fine, but if you don't have any quality and if you don't have any belief you can score goals, it's probably just a better problem to have than thinking that you're going to concede a goal at any moment. And trust me, I can say that as a Liverpool fan because that's what we are. But it's not much better not being able to see your team ever score goals.
Yeah, and what did you think about Frank not going for the false 9?
Well, I think inherently with Raheem Sterling and João Felix playing up front, you pretty much are playing with two somewhat false 9s. Sterling's characteristics are maybe a bit more of a striker than Kai Havertz, but he's still not a striker. So
yeah, he's not.
Yeah, I thought inherently it was sort of implied that it was a false nine. Um, but I thought where Frank made a mistake was putting Fofana in the team, and I would have played with Reece James as the wide centre back because I trust him better in a 1v1 with Vinny. Now, if this is the tight Stamford Bridge, and maybe you want to use Reece James to hurt the opposition a bit more, then fair enough. But given that it's not, I would have put Reece James as the wide right centre back, and I would have put probably a winger in front of him, maybe a Mudryk, just running the line, simplify his job. I think I'd choose Mudryk over Pulisic or Ziyech because I don't think they're as rapid as Mudryk gives you the chance to be. And I think the balance of that team, maybe you even do what Tuchel did and put Loftus Cheek as the wing back, and he can help bolster the midfield when you're out of position. But one thing I definitely wanted was Reece James up against Vinny, and I know, dude, Vinny's awesome, so he's gonna beat Reece James, and he did beat Reece James. But I still think Reece James is probably your best matchup against Vinny in that situation. As no one else I'd rather have at Chelsea, and there's not many others I'd rather have in the world because I still think Reece James is a pretty good defender, even though look,
But
Vinny gives everyone a
but you
rough
know
a
what
rough
though?
night this season.
But
Yeah,
it's but the because we saw Vinny skin him a couple of times as well, and you're saying that you'd trust Reece James in that matchup the most. You said out of anyone in the world.
well, not the most, but maybe he's
Yeah,
in the list.
possibly. Like, and I'm trying to think of other right backs, and I'm probably gonna agree with you, but it's also telling. That's telling of how much confidence Chelsea actually lack. Like the fact that Reece James is getting skinned. He's probably one of your best players. He's one that you would trust most in that matchup, and that sort of reflects on the team in a whole as well. Um, so just oh shit, man, I'm not having any luck. I can't extend my legs. But yeah, you get my point. Like that, it's it go like one goes with the other. Like Reece James in that. Like if Chelsea were flying and like the whole team was playing well, I don't think Vinny's skinning Reece James. At least not that many times. I think he got him like three or four
Yeah, not
times.
that. And I think Reece James got tired a little bit quicker than normal. Obviously, with I don't know how many games he's had back. He's had a fair few games back, I guess, maybe. But yeah, I don't know. The other telling thing was Fofana getting booked in what 2 minutes
Yeah.
because Vinny was 1v1
And
against him, and it's just
Koulibaly
like,
got injured as well.
and Koulibaly got injured because he made a stupid mistake as well.
Chilwell
He
red
misjudged the
card.
ball. And the Chilwell red card, so
Yeah.
he won't be there for the second leg, and he's a huge player for him. Yeah, Chelsea are somewhat fucked, but yeah, I don't know what more there is to say. We'll see how.
One thing
Really, this
before we move
yeah,
on,
go.
I do want to add. This one thing I've noticed, man, Carlo Ancelotti, more time, like very, very often, he gets his subs right. Like,
Sensio, of course.
yeah,
He's
like,
been
but he's Carlo's super sub, but he was also Zidane's super sub as well. But very often the subs that Carlo makes, they're the right subs in the right moment. And I'm sort of throwing this back to Arteta at Liverpool. How I was like, well, yeah, Tierney should have come on a lot earlier. Kivior shouldn't have come on. Maybe you put Jorginho for Odegaard, so you have three like sitting in the midfield. Like if that was Ancelotti would have made those subs a lot earlier. He would have made the right subs as well. Yeah, so but that's one thing that you're talking about, like how old is Ancelotti? Like 60, 65. Arteta's only like 40, so yeah, it's one thing that I really like, and I think Sir Alex also he would always make the right subs at the right time too. That's something that like I really admire about like top quality managers, like making the right
old school.
decisions.
They're
Yeah,
old school as well,
yeah,
these managers, which
yeah.
is great. I love the Ancelotti love fest. I think that's a great sort of takeaway to have from this game because obviously we love Vinny, we love Benzema, we love Modric, we love all those star players for Real Madrid. But what makes Carlo is so good is that more often than not we're talking about them and not him even though he does a fantastic job with this group of players. Now, whether he could do as good a job with another group of players, probably not, given that his age and,
Well,
and all of that. But
he didn't do quite well at Everton.
yeah, exactly. But
Actually, he did do okay. He did actually do alright.
he did fine, given where Everton actually are.
Yeah, they were actually looking decent. You're like, ooh, like they're playing some decent football here. And
with James, when James was still playing,
yeah, like that
was alright to watch.
They had like a good like first 2-3 months.
Yeah, with Alan in there as well. Yeah, they looked alright. But another thing we noticed with Carlo before the game, which was fantastic, Granddaddy Carlo just walking around the halls. He's just like, he sees Kalidou Koulibaly, has a long chat with him, obviously managed him at Napoli, then gets to the front of the Chelsea line, sees Thiago Silva was with him at PSG, has a long old chat. Thiago Silva embraces him. It's like, Granddaddy Carlo's everywhere. He knows everyone.
Yeah.
He's managed everyone by this stage.
Was Silva with him at AC as well, just before he left AC?
Nah, he wasn't. Thiago Silva was like late 2000, well, early 2010s. He was with Allegri mainly. Ancelotti had already left for, I think, in the
Chelsea.
07-08 season.
Yeah,
he was at Chelsea in 09-10.
Yeah.
Oh, and obviously he knows Frank Lampard, who's in the opposite dugout as well. So, yeah, Carlo Ancelotti, just knowing everyone. Just, what a man. My favourite manager of all time.
Yeah, I saw that all like that's pretty cool.
And these are like the two Chelsea centre backs out now that he's just already worked with them at different clubs. It's really testament to where he's been. He's won all 5 major leagues in Europe, which is the only man to do that, which is fantastic.
Yeah, how many has Mourinho won? He doesn't have Germany, does he? And he does have France.
No. Yeah, those two.
And that's the same as Pep doesn't have France or Italy.
Yeah, I would like to see Pep in Italy one day.
Yeah, I'm not. It would have been him at Juve like 3 or 4 years ago. Would have made sense
with Ronaldo.
Yeah,
I would have loved to see Pep work with Ronaldo.
That was still like peak Ronaldo, but coming towards the other side of the mountain.
Second peak.
Yeah.
That's a good.
Yeah. Anything else to add in relation to Champions League, or should we just quickly recap the Europa League? I don't think that there's many games to really, or any games to really preview. This weekend.
I had these on in the background today, so I didn't watch them that intently. But what I did see was Sevilla having the magic of the Europa League yet again, because Man United were cruising. I was ready to turn that game off, and then I still have it on in the background. I see Sevilla have scored a very jammy, lucky goal. Like, how that ball deflects into the net off Malacia is bad enough, but then how the ball deflects off Maguire into his own goal.
And it's Maguire's face as well. Like, I was telling Tiff, I was like, it's funny when it deflects off the head, but it's even funny when it deflects off the face. Like,
and when it's Harry Maguire.
Yeah, and it's like out of all
it's his slab.
Of all the people, it had to be him as well. Oh
man. Sevilla just have something in this cup. They can be down and out, and they're just not.
Man United might have problems as well, because Varane and Martinez got injured.
Yeah, I didn't. I was meant to look up what the Martinez injury was.
I'm not sure how serious they are, but if both of them are out, I'm not sure about their top 4 chances then. Depending on how long both of them are out.
I still think I have to fall apart. I still think they're comfortable enough in top 4. But if we're hang
on, but like you have Newcastle that are equal on points, have better goal difference, and you have Tottenham right behind them.
Top 3.
Yeah, but you have Tottenham right behind them, so Tottenham.
Yeah, like we said last pod, that is the wild card. Tottenham are the wild card. Can they be consistent enough to chase down? This could be a blessing for them, because United could start slipping. So yeah, that's not a bad point. But again, it's Tottenham. We don't trust Tottenham. So we'll see. We'll see. We still trust United more at this point.
Yeah, I'm just looking up injury news while you go ahead.
Yeah. And if we're talking about injuries that might kill a team's top 4 hopes, Paulo Dybala got injured in the tie against Feyenoord, the one where Feyenoord were able to get a little bit of revenge on Roma, who missed a penalty in that game, and just a bit of revenge for the Conference League. But Paulo Dybala could be out for a little while if that one's severe, and that might dampen their top four hopes, who Roma and Manchester United are not as assured in their position in this competition anymore after what happened this morning, because Man United still have to go to Seville now and win somehow, whether it be through extra time and penalties, and that's not going to be easy at all, given that somehow Sevilla just have the Europa League gods on their side all the time as well. So they got to overcome that, and obviously Roma have to overcome a 1-0 defeat, probably without Paulo Dybala in the second leg. So they are in precarious positions. Juve will be reasonably happy with what they did, winning 1-0, sort of repeating the Freiburg trick from the round before. And I must say I was a little bit disappointed with Leverkusen, who I thought Union Saint-Gilloise were probably the better team for the most part of this game. But at least Leverkusen were able to get a goal and draw that 1-1 all. So, yeah, a fair few. These ones are definitely more on a knife edge than the Champions League, that's for sure.
Yeah, I like seeing the results. There's a lot of like 1-0s and whatnot. Just in regards to the injury, well, Martinez got stretched off, and if you're getting stretched off, that's
he got carried off by Montiel and.
But apparently, but there was something here. Like I think then he got stretched to the rooms or something.
Maybe. But I remember seeing that they were getting a round of applause from the crowd, and a couple of Sevilla players were lifting him off the pitch, like one on each shoulder.
Well, they want to just get him off the pitch.
He won the World Cup, but I guess he had won the World Cup.
Yeah. But like the Varane one, it seems like he's been carrying a knock for the last couple of weeks, so that one could just be like a repetitive strain injury or something like that. So yeah, if they're out for 2 or 3 games, and considering like they have a game against Tottenham, I think they have one other tough game coming up. I'm not sure who against, but yeah, like I don't know. They could be a little bit of jeopardy there for their top 4 chances.
I hope there is, and I have no doubt that you also hope that there is as well. Imagine that. Imagine if United just end the season with a League Cup to their name after all of this.
Yeah, like
no top 4 qualification, no Europa League, nothing.
So what has the narratives been? The narratives have been title challenges.
No, the narrative. No. You got to start from the start. The narrative at the start was this hopeless. Same old United. Ten Hag's a fraud. And then competent team. I think we saw team that can beat big teams at home. Then all of a sudden, really good run, solid team, maybe a title challenge. I don't think we ever got to bona fide title challenge, I must say. But they were
throwing it around. They were also throwing around. United will finish above Arsenal in the league. That was being thrown around.
No sane person was throwing that around. That was just Gary Neville.
No, but there were other people throwing it around, like United fans.
Those people were insane.
Yeah. But they were saying that like as well. So that was a narrative. Treble was a narrative.
Oh yes, treble. Hey, by the way, they can still do that.
They can still do that, yes. So that's a narrative. That what was the other narrative? There was one other one that was being floated around. But regardless, like now, look, I don't know what happens. Okay, I just quickly. Well, maybe we'll wrap up the whole pod on this, or I'll ask you one final question actually. But what happens if they just end up winning the League Cup and they finish 5th and they get knocked out of the Europa League and they don't win the FA Cup? So they go from, potentially finishing your top 4, potential treble. Like that's not a successful season at all for United.
But it's not entirely unsuccessful compared to what they did last season. Compared to what they should have done from this point. It'll be disappointing, no doubt. But I think if you gave them that, particularly after the first 2 games of the season, maybe if you gave them that before the season, I still think a lot of United fans might have even taken that, like a really good challenge for top 4. You narrowly miss out because you got injuries at a bad time of the season at the end of the season, and you win a trophy, and you go deep in competitions as well, in all of those competitions basically, I still think you'd take that, and then they'll just say, let's go back into the transfer market. Now the problem is your targets might be lessened. You might not have as good a quality that you can go for in that transfer market, but you're still Manchester United, so you can still attract some players to the club. And you just go again and you say, where do we need to rebuild? Probably in midfield a little bit, or reinforce. Where else can we get? If we can get the right forward player, if we can get the right striker, then sure. If we can get the absolute right goalkeeper, because that's a big decision. I don't think they'll look at that, particularly if they finish fifth. But if they can attract Champions League talent quality, then they might look at that. So, yeah, honestly, I don't think it'll be doom and gloom. It'll be funny for us, those who hate United, which you and I are somewhat in that camp.
We share
I
the
don't mind when
passion.
I love football, so if United are playing good football, I can accept it. Okay, if they're wowing us with something, then it's like, all right, that's fine, because I love football. But yeah, for us, we'll have a good chuckle at that. But honestly, if they narrowly miss out on Champions League, they don't quite get to Europa League or the FA Cup. Bitterly disappointing, but not something to say. I wouldn't even say unsuccessful. Like decent season, not great, but decent.
Well, they would have improved on last season
Yeah,
because they
yeah.
finished sixth last season. So if they finish
And
fifth
Ten Hag would
and
have.
win a League
Yeah.
Cup, it's an improvement on last season.
And Ten Hag and United would have at least shown us during this season what they are capable of. They
Yeah,
just, yeah, yeah. So not disastrous,
yeah.
but funny nonetheless.
And one,
Watch them go and win the treble after we try and do
it's
this.
possible because like we don't know about these injuries. Like the Varane one looks like it's not season ending. The way that Martinez went off, it could potentially
No,
be
it didn't look
season
good.
ending. Just because there is what like 7 weeks left, 8 weeks left of the season. So that's that. I don't know if I really want to even ask this question. It was just something they were talking about on Talk Sport. They were just like talking about like out of the players, because like Darren Bent is an Arsenal fan and Andy Goldstein is a United fan, and like they were basically just speaking about what players out of the two teams are like either already elite or like can dine at the top table. So like I think the main argument was around De Gea, that he can't dine at the top table with like, for instance, like an Edison or an Allison, but he's like he's a very good goalkeeper, but he's not elite. But and like he's never been a first choice for Spain either. So that's a good argument.
Exactly.
Like there's always been like 3 or 4 goalkeepers ahead of him for Spain. And then obviously there was talk about Rashford and Saka as well. And but United have like what, Casemiro and Varane. You'd probably say that it can dine at the top table and that are elite. Casemiro more so because he just won the Champions League 8 months ago.
No, Casemiro 100%.
Yeah.
Varane, I want to say yes, but he did have a long time when he first got to United, sort of in the wilderness, nowhere near that kind of level. So maybe it's been too long, and has somewhat been revoked. Although he won 3 Champions Leagues
and a World Cup.
And a World Cup. I don't know. He'll always be a legend, but whether he was still elite. All right. Here's the thing I want to finish on because I hear this. I need to set this straight because you've set me off, and this is what I want to finish on. I need to set this straight for people who sort of say this and think this. Lionel Messi is not an elite club footballer anymore, and he needs to be being talked about like he is, because he's just not at that level for me anymore. So we're hearing obviously a lot about his transfer, a lot about what PSG will do going forward after what happened, and I just heard it too often that he is sort of the guy you want to. He's still an elite. He's still at that level. He's still the one you. Obviously, with the Barcelona transfer, I think this is where I got really up in arms. Where it's just like, I don't think Barcelona should be getting in Lionel Messi. I don't think you can rely on him in the same way that you once could. And this is no denigration to Leo Messi. I'm just simply saying, in my opinion, because of his lack of work rate, because he does nothing against the ball, and because we saw in the big game against Bayern, he was bullied out of the game because physically he just can't do it. Now, for 7 games at a World Cup where somewhat the playing field is leveled because teams, international teams, somewhat start from the same starting point, whereas in club football, these teams are so much more intense, so much more organized, so much more, I don't know, just in tune, so much
And
quicker. The game is so much quicker.
You have a mix of the top quality players. So instead of like having 4 or 5 top quality players, you have 11 top quality players as well.
Yeah, and you see that because the game is so much quicker, so much more intense, and that's not a game for Leo Messi to be the decisive player in. And when you couple that with the fact that he has to be the decisive player because he does no work against the ball, I just don't think he's viable to be a guy with that attitude who can play at a big club that will be successful. Like, he might be able to go to Barcelona, they might be able to win the league again because that Spanish play sort of suits that. But in the Champions League, I don't think Barcelona will do anything if Leo Messi is their main guy. I think they'll be just about as good as they were this season, which wasn't very good. They got knocked out in the group stage. So, I don't know. That's something that's really ticked me off. I love Leo Messi. I think he's the GOAT. I preface I say that after saying what I've just said. I do think he is the GOAT, but in terms of being an elite player at European club football anymore, that player that he maybe once was, that we're all tempted to keep thinking about him as, he's not that guy anymore. He just simply isn't.
Same with Ronaldo. But like, I just want to I have a follow up question.
Well, the guy who's at Al Nassr.
I have a follow up question with that, and then I'll finish off with just something in regards to Messi. But like, if we're bringing age into it, for instance, Messi's the same age as Benzema. I'm pretty sure. I think they're both 35. But so Benzema and Modric, they're still elite. Like, how are they still elite? And Modric is 2 years older, I'm pretty sure. So like, how does that all work?
Have you seen how much those guys work?
Yeah,
they actually run. They actually move around the pitch.
But that's the amazing thing. Like, both the same age or older, and they have a much higher work rate.
Well, yeah, no, that's fair. But to also be fair, for a lot of their accomplishments, and I'm not taking anything away from either of them, but for a lot of their accomplishments, Cristiano Ronaldo was the guy carrying that team. Whereas Leo Messi has had to carry his teams everywhere.
I sort of feel like that's been disproven after last year with Real Madrid. To a certain level.
No, it hasn't, because Cristiano Ronaldo was unbelievable for all those Champions League wins. I don't think it's been disproven, but
it's been disproven in my eyes. It's been disproven because pretty much the same team or the same core of the team has still continued to win a Champions League.
Yeah, they won a Champions League, one that they were rank outsiders to win, one that was an unbelievable run to win, and they proved how elite these players are. But for those 4 previous successes, Cristiano Ronaldo was the main man, and Cristiano Ronaldo was not just the main man, he was clearly the main man for all of them. So for me, that is the definition of carrying. Like, he of course, it's football, it's 11 people on a pitch, he needs elite players to help him, and he has that, no doubt, because Luka Modric carried Benzema, Gareth Bale at the time, Sergio Ramos. I mean, we're naming legends of the game, but Cristiano Ronaldo was the best player of that. And this is another thing, and I think we've addressed this, but because of how Ronaldo has soured on us in recent months, we have forgotten that this guy is maybe the best club footballer of all time. I would put him above Messi for sure. I would put him in the same breath as Di Stefano. I think Cristiano Ronaldo has the resume at club level to probably be the best who's ever done it. Considering he won Champions Leagues at 2 different clubs, I think that's maybe the differentiating factor between him and a Messi and a Di Stefano. And he was the main man at probably both those places. So
yeah, and
I don't know. That one kind of irks me as well.
And he's won league titles at 3 different countries as well. And just to finish
he'll be
off,
disappointed he couldn't break. Yeah, let's finish it.
just finish off. You mentioned Lionel Messi transfer potential to Barca, but there was also another one to, is it to one of Ronaldo's direct rivals in Saudi Arabia?
Reunite him back in Saudi Arabia.
But I'm not sure where it is. But have you seen the potential wage salary? 400 million per year.
Nice, not bad.
But
how much is Ronaldo getting?
I think 200. But like you break that, hang on. But you break that down. Like they broke it down like per month, per week, per day, per second, like all the way down to per second. And like I think he would be making 72 euros per minute, right? And I'm just like, okay, the average salary here is around 700 to 750 euros per month. Messi goes and takes a shit, and he makes what people like. I think like, you know, to take a shit, wipe, do all, like wash your hands. I think it's a 10 to 15 minute job. You'd say on average 10 to 15 minutes. Like he goes and takes a shit, and he makes more than what people make here in a month. Like how insane is that?
That is insane. I think that's the perfect note to end the
The brown note.
I have nothing to add.
So Lionel Messi's shits are more valuable than people's jobs. Let's just put that into perspective. But yeah.
Well, you could show that value on the pitch again. That's done.
Well, the value on the pitch has probably turned to shit. At least in the defensive sense.
At least at the club. Oh, he's still been pretty... Look, enough of Leo Messi. He's good. He's still a good player. He's just not that elite player.
Yeah, just
and soon he'll be shit money.
Just really quickly, and then we'll end. What wasn't there talk like years ago, like when he was like 30, so when he's still at Barca, it's like, oh, he's gonna transfer into the Iniesta role, so he'll go to like a number 8. So like that hasn't really happened, but like we all thought that would be the natural transition for Messi. So like
you can't do anything with him when he doesn't do anything against the ball. Like, come on, man. Like, I get that you're the GOAT, so if you want to stop playing, but stop hampering teams with it as well.
Yeah. We'll leave it on that.
Hampering's harsh. He's double figures for assists and goals, so take what I said with a grain of salt, but
yeah, but it's
still
Yeah, well,
we saw in the big moment what you need to do for PSG. He just wasn't. He wasn't Messi. He was a different Messi.
Yeah.
Not that guy.
Yeah, it's not the Messi that we saw. Like the last good Messi was what you'd say when
19. Well, no, the last great Messi. There's been, like I said, he's still good.
The last great Messi was
19 for me.
I'd say it was
Ballon d'Or.
I'd probably go as far back as that the treble season under Enrique.
Yeah, he was great Messi there, but no. 19, he was great. He still won the Ballon d'Or. He was still peak Messi.
He was very good, I felt, but I still didn't feel he was peak.
Oh, if we're talking about his peak, but I still think that was part of his peak. Now,
I'd say that was already coming down the hill. Like it was starting to roll over. It was starting to roll over. It was
just before. It's like a ball hanging onto the edge of like a steep green, and then it starts to roll off. He was just there. I think he still scored 50 goals that season, won the Ballon d'Or. Let's not forget, Barcelona should have won that Champions League.
And didn't
against Liverpool in the
and it was Dembele that didn't seal it. And didn't Van Dijk lose the Ballon d'Or voting by like 3 votes or something, or 6 votes?
Yeah, it was pretty tight. I actually thought it was the right decision because I got to stay consistent. I thought Ronaldo should have won the Modric one, and I still think Messi should have won the one that year, and he didn't. So.
Anyway,
as much as I love Verge,
the Verge, do you still love him?
Man, he's testing it.
Okay, we're ending on this. We're ending on this. You said before the Arsenal game, that you're, because I think they versus City. You said you're ready to take away his elite status. I know
World class. Yeah, I'll tell.
or world class. Are you after the Arsenal game? Considering, would you put him at fault for both goals, or at least the second one? At least the second one. Maybe not the first one. The first one was like, he's trying to clear.
Peak Van Dijk probably still does better than that, though.
Yeah, but are you ready to take away that world class status or elite status or whatever you said after the Arsenal game?
Yeah. I'll take it away and I'll give it to Upamecano. Honestly, I think it's fair. I think it's fair to take world class status from all Liverpool players. If you want to make a case for Alisson, fine, but he's the only one that I'll hear a case for that's world class now, and they need to show it. If they come out barnstorming first 10, 15 weeks of next season, then I'll be quick to reinstate it because we've seen how good those guys are. But as it stands, I'm happy to take it away.
All right. Well, watch this space next season. Liverpool, can you
next season?
Can you get back into it?
Chelsea, Liverpool, a lot of teams have a lot on next season, but they're dead this season.
Yeah. Anyway, Caleb, been a pleasure. Seeing those sort of pre-hiccups. I can feel it. Ooh, okay. Yeah, it's been a pleasure. And look, I know we didn't review any games, but I don't think there's really any games to review this weekend.
Nah, we got nothing to preview. There's a Barca derby. There's a few half decent.
Yeah.
Lens PSG is kind of interesting, but
we'll get into it on Monday or Tuesday though, so it doesn't really matter. And everyone that tuned in, a bit of a shorter one, a bit of a difference. Make sure you like, subscribe, and all that good stuff. And thanks for coming, and bye for now.